Welcome to Zoe Stories. My cross-dressing story. How did I get here? College felt like stepping into a whole new world. The moment I walked onto campus, the air seemed different. Heavier, charged with possibility, freedom, and the kind of curiosity that only a place removed from childhood rules could inspire. For the first time in my life, I felt the space to explore myself without the watchful eyes of family constantly hovering over me. And yet, with that freedom came a strange and heavy tension. I was still the same boy, the same secret bearer, but now the world around me pulsed with things I hadn't fully imagined: beauty, fashion, allure, and temptation. The first few weeks of college were overwhelming in ways I hadn't anticipated. Everywhere I looked, girls dressed in ways I'd only imagined. Party outfits, casual chic, skirts that swished as they walked across the quad. Every detail sparked a quiet ache in me. I couldn't articulate it, not then. I didn't know how to name it. It was fascination, yes, but also longing. I wondered, how would I look in that dress? How would it feel if I slipped on those soft, silky fabrics? How would the world feel if I could take a step into the skin of someone else, if only for a few hours? It wasn't long before I began to act on these thoughts. I didn't have my own wardrobe yet. Money was tight, and independence was new, but I became clever. I started looking for clothes left out in the laundry room. The thrill of finding something small, something private, something mine to try on, even if it belonged to someone else, made my heart race. I knew it was wrong, yes, but the secrecy added to the intensity, the excitement. I would choose my items carefully. A delicate pair of panties, a soft camisole, something that would fit without arousing suspicion. Once hidden in my dorm room, I would change, slowly, reverently, feeling the fabric against my skin, feeling a spark of transformation that made the world outside fade away. And then came her, my first girlfriend, who would see me. She was different. She noticed small things, the way I'd fidget, the slight hesitation in my movements, the subtle longing in my eyes when passing the girls in the hallways. One night, after spending hours together studying, I found myself trembling as I admitted it to her. My fascination with wearing feminine clothing, the secret I had carried for years. I expected judgment, laughter, rejection. But instead, she listened.
She didn't mock me.
She didn't insist it was a phase. She asked questions, curious, gentle, careful. And in that moment, the first spark of validation burned brightly in me. She allowed me, tentatively at first, to explore myself in her presence. The first time I slipped into her panties, my body responded in ways I hadn't anticipated. I felt attractive. I felt alive. I felt desired. Her approval was intoxicating, her touch affirming. She smacked my butt playfully, and I couldn't help the shiver of pleasure that ran down my spine. The thrill of being seen, the thrill of being desired, was entirely new. And yet, even in that excitement, a shadow lingered.
Shame.
I was still the same secretive boy, and society's rules still hummed faintly in my mind, reminding me that what I was doing was not allowed, not normal, not safe. I became obsessed in ways I hadn't been before. In private, I would experiment longer, layering camisoles, shorts, sometimes even her dresses if they fit. My fingers traced seams, lingered on lace, memorized the textures. I was learning the contours of femininity, mapping it onto myself, trying to feel what it would be like to inhabit another skin. And at the same time, I was discovering the sexual dimension. My body responded in ways I hadn't fully controlled, and a delicious, guilty pleasure coursed through me whenever I was dressed as Katie. I was both terrified and exhilarated, caught between shame and desire, self-loathing and validation. The dynamic with my girlfriend was complex. She accepted me, yes, but I think she underestimated how deeply I craved this validation. I would sometimes push the boundaries, seeking longer sessions, more attention, more affirmation of the girl inside me. It was addictive in ways I hadn't anticipated. I knew it. I felt the pull. And I also knew the danger of obsession, of losing control, of letting this part of me dominate too much of my life. Yet the thrill was undeniable. irresistible, and entirely private. College offered anonymity, too, and I began to experiment in ways I couldn't have imagined at home. I learned to blend my masculine and feminine sides, dressing partially in secret while maintaining the outward appearance expected of a male student. Small things, socks, panties under jeans, a borrowed camisole, were enough to feed the fantasy. Each experiment was a quiet, intimate ritual, and each time, I learned a little more about myself. But the more I explored, the more I realized something else. I was oscillating between two extremes. On one hand, I relished escape, the quiet hours alone in my dorm room where I could exist fully as Katie without judgment. On the other hand, I relished being seen, being desired, being acknowledged as beautiful. And yet, every time I crossed that threshold into desire, shame followed closely behind. Sometimes it was faint, a whisper in the back of my mind. Sometimes it was deafening, crashing over me and making me question everything about myself, everything I had secretly enjoyed for so long. The balance was delicate, and I didn't always get it right. There were moments when obsession overtook joy. I would purge my clothes, hide the evidence, swear I wouldn't do it again, and then, inevitably, return. The cycle of shame and relief, of desire and denial, became a rhythm in my life, one I couldn't yet control. But it was teaching me, shaping me, slowly preparing me for a larger understanding of myself, one that would only come later. Independence after college accelerated everything. For the first time, I had money to buy my own feminine clothes. I could choose fabrics and styles that resonated with me, that reflected the Katie inside. The first wig I purchased was a revelation. I remember placing it on my head, adjusting it, brushing it, and then seeing my reflection. I didn't feel euphoric, I wanted to be clear about that, but I felt right, attractive, recognizable to myself. And in that recognition, a new sense of self emerged. The girl I had imagined in private for years finally had a face, a form, a presence that was tangible. Makeup became the next frontier. Blending foundation, applying eyeliner, shaping eyebrows, it was a meticulous process, a ritual that took hours at first. Each brushstroke was both a technical challenge and a deeply emotional act. With every contour, every highlight, every swipe of lipstick, I was constructing a version of myself that felt powerful, that felt alive, that felt seen. And in private, I let myself respond to it in ways I had previously reserved for guilt. Desire no longer whispered. It roared, and I allowed it. Even as I reveled in this newfound expression, the shadow of shame never fully disappeared. There were nights when I would cry quietly, wondering if I had gone too far, questioning whether my desires were healthy, whether they were wrong. I would consider purging the clothes again, swearing that I wouldn't allow myself to indulge, and yet, hours later, I would return. The push and pull became a constant in my life, a testament to the complexity of desire, identity, and self-acceptance. Looking back on that period now, I see it as a crucible. College was the first time I truly explored myself in both privacy and intimacy, and the first time I experienced both validation and shame in equal measure. It taught me about the depth of my desires, the fragility of my self-perception, and the importance of acceptance. I learned that the path to understanding oneself isn't linear. It's a series of oscillations between fear and joy, shame and liberation, secrecy and revelation. Through all of it, I discovered one central truth. Katie was always a part of me. She wasn't a phase. She wasn't a fantasy I could discard. She wasn't merely a tool for arousal. She was a reflection of a side of myself that needed recognition, acceptance, and care. And that understanding, though it would take years to fully integrate, was the beginning of a journey that would lead me to the most profound acceptance of all, from myself, and eventually from someone who mattered most, my wife. The college years, filled with curiosity, sexual awakening, and discovery, marked a pivotal transformation. They prepared me for independence, for exploration, for ownership of my desires. They were the first step toward embracing the duality of who I am, both the man the world expects and the girl who lives within, quietly shaping every choice, every thought, every act. And as I look back, I realize that every stolen garment, every secret moment, every whispered fantasy, every touch of validation was not merely indulgence, it was preparation. Preparation for the life I would eventually claim, fully, openly, and with someone who would accept me entirely. I've always struggled to remember exactly when it all began. Some memories feel more like whispers, faint impressions I catch when I think too hard. If someone asks me when I started crossdressing, I usually say 10 because it's a simple answer, easy to understand. But if I'm honest with myself, I know it started much earlier, maybe 5 or 6. One memory, tiny and fragile, comes to mind often. I was standing in the living room, a blanket tied loosely around my waist like a skirt, holding a doll my younger sister loved. My brother was there, laughing, playing along, completely unaware that something inside me was stirring in a way I didn't yet understand. I pretended I was the mother of the doll, caring for it, rocking it, singing quietly to it. And in that moment, I felt different. Not in a bad way, not in a sexual way. Just different. Curious. Alive in a way that felt quiet but important. I didn't know why I felt drawn to this game. I didn't know if it meant anything about me or who I would become. I just knew that when the blanket was around my waist and I moved carefully, pretending to nurture something small and fragile, I felt a part of myself open up. And I've never forgotten it. By the time I was around 10, that curiosity had taken on a slightly sharper edge. I discovered my mom's and sister's panties. I still can't explain why, but the moment I slipped them on, I felt something new stir inside me. It wasn't exactly pleasure at first, at least not in the way people might assume. It was awareness. Heightened awareness. I noticed textures I'd never cared about before, the difference between boys' clothes and girls' clothes. Something about it made me wonder. Something about it made me pay attention to my own body in ways I hadn't done before. I was careful, naturally. Boys weren't supposed to wear girls' clothes. That knowledge created both tension and excitement. I would sneak into my room, shut the door, and explore quietly. Sometimes I'd look in the mirror, trying to imagine what I looked like, adjusting the waistband, feeling the fabric glide across my skin. I didn't know what I was feeling, but I knew I liked it. It wasn't just underwear. Soon I was experimenting with nightgowns, my mother's old swimsuits, even her loose skirts. I never understood why I was drawn to these things, only that when I wore them, the world outside seemed to pause. The clothes became my little secret, my private world. I don't remember ever being caught during these early years. Perhaps it was luck. Perhaps it was careful hiding. But the secrecy itself added to the allure, making the act feel intimate and sacred. By the time I became a teenager, my experimentation became more vivid, more daring. I would sometimes borrow from cousins when I visited, taking small things, panties, camisoles, carefully, quietly, hiding them away. I can't tell you the exact thrill it brought me, but I remember a fluttering in my chest, a mix of guilt and anticipation, every time I did it. I know now that taking these things without permission was wrong, and I carry that regret with me even today. I want to apologize to everyone whose clothing I borrowed in those years. It was also around this time that I was first caught by my mother. I had returned from a visit with cousins, feeling guilty but also eager to explore, when she found a pair of their panties tucked in my backpack. I can still feel the weight of her gaze, the quiet tension in the room as she held them up. She asked me directly why I had them. I hesitated, my stomach twisting, and then I admitted the truth, at least in part. I told her I liked wearing them, that I wasn't sure why, and that I didn't know if it would ever stop. She asked the questions that every parent eventually asks, the ones that seem simple but carry the weight of judgment. Do you want to be a girl? Do you like boys? I said no to both, honestly. I didn't want to be a girl, and I was straight, or at least I thought I was. But that didn't explain the side of me that dressed in secret, that craved the textures and shapes of feminine clothing. It was a part of me I couldn't yet articulate, a part one couldn't yet defend. My mother didn't push too hard that day, though I think she worried. Instead, she tried to redirect me. She signed me up for sports, something I had never done before. I suppose she hoped that focus, energy, and discipline would pull me away from the urge to crossdress. And in a way, it worked. The next few years of high school became less about secret exploration and more about practices, games, and academics. I still had occasional pieces tucked away in my room, but they were far from my focus. I convinced myself it was just a phase, and for a time, I felt safer believing that. Yet, even during those quieter years, the desire never fully disappeared. Walking past classmates dressed in stylish outfits, seeing girls confident in short skirts or flowing dresses, I would catch myself staring, imagining how it would feel to wear something like that, to glide across a room, to feel the same kind of confidence. I couldn't act on these thoughts. They were still buried under rules, expectations, and shame, but they were always there, quiet, persistent. Looking back now, I realize that those early years, childhood curiosity, secret experimentation, teenage borrowing, first confrontation, built the foundation for everything that would come later. They taught me how to hide, how to cherish, and how to navigate the tension between desire and societal expectation. They introduced me to the duality I would carry for decades, the boy I was expected to be, and the girl I longed to become, quietly, privately, intimately. Even now, I think of my younger self, the boy wrapped in a blanket, pretending to be the mother of a doll. The boy sneaking into cousins' rooms, clutching small garments to his chest. The teenager explaining himself to a worried mother, trying to make sense of feelings he barely understood. That child is still part of me, the quiet spark that Katie has grown from. I hope if he could see me now, he would feel proud. Proud that the journey, though secretive, shame-filled, and confusing, eventually led to acceptance, understanding, and a deeper connection with who I truly am. Those first moments, those early awakenings, were never just about clothing or desire. They were the first signs of a truth I would spend years learning to name, to accept, and finally, to celebrate. That Katie existed, quietly but insistently, waiting for the day I would see her as part of myself, not as a secret to hide, but as a life to embrace. College felt like stepping into an entirely new world, one where the rules I had grown up with no longer applied. The moment I walked onto campus, I felt a strange mixture of freedom and anxiety. Freedom because I was finally away from the constant oversight of my parents, the small town where everyone knew everyone, the familiar eyes that could see straight through me. Anxiety because I was still carrying the secret that had defined my life for years, my fascination with feminine clothing, the girl I had learned to hide deep inside myself. The first few weeks were a whirlwind of new experiences. I was surrounded by people who didn't know me, who had no preconceived notions about who I was or what I did in my private life. For the first time, I felt the possibility to explore. But the world outside my room, full of attractive girls in party outfits, skirts that swished as they walked, makeup that glimmered under the sunlight, those images sparked something in me. Not just curiosity, but desire. I found myself staring more than I wanted to, imagining how it would feel to wear the fabrics that made them shine, to move with the same confidence, to exist in that space as someone else, someone freer. At first, I acted in small ways. Dorm life offered opportunities that didn't exist at home. Clothes left in the laundry room became my secret treasure. A camisole here, a pair of panties there, small items, easy to hide, easy to experiment with. I would wait until my roommate was gone, change quickly, and feel the fabric against my skin. I would trace the seams, marvel at the textures, and imagine what it would be like to truly inhabit that femininity. I had no words for it then, only feelings, a mix of excitement, guilt, and fascination that made my heart race. Then came her, my first girlfriend who would see me. She noticed things I tried so hard to hide, the way I hesitated in certain situations, the subtle longing in my eyes when passing by girls in skirts, the quiet curiosity that made me linger over small details. One night, after hours of studying together, I finally told her. My voice shook as I admitted the secret I had carried for years, my fascination with feminine clothing, my private experiments, the truth about who I sometimes was in the quiet of my dorm room. I braced myself for judgment, for laughter, for rejection. But she surprised me. She didn't laugh. She didn't call it a phase. She asked questions, gentle, curious, careful, without condemnation. And then she offered me something I had never experienced before: acceptance. For the first time, I felt the thrill of being acknowledged, of being allowed to exist in this part of myself without shame. She let me explore in her presence, tentatively at first. I remember the first time I wore her panties while she watched. My heart pounded. My hands trembled slightly as I adjusted them, trying to see myself in the mirror, trying to understand the version of myself that she was now seeing. Her eyes, bright and encouraging, made my cheeks flush. She smacked my butt playfully, and I shivered. It was a rush unlike anything I had felt before: desire, validation, and a profound sense of connection all wrapped into one. This experience opened a new dimension for me. I began to explore not just privately, but in the presence of someone who saw me fully. I reveled in the textures, the soft fabrics, the small accessories that made me feel like Katie. I started to experiment more, layering camisoles, trying on skirts and dresses that fit, adjusting my hair, even attempting subtle makeup with what little supplies I had. The thrill of being seen, combined with the private joy of touch and texture, became intoxicating. And yet, even in this acceptance, shame lingered. Every night, I would reflect quietly, sometimes ashamed of the obsession, sometimes questioning whether it was too much. I knew the intensity of my fascination had grown. It wasn't just a phase. It wasn't just curiosity. It was something deeper, something intrinsic to who I was, and that realization both terrified and exhilarated me. College also gave me independence I had never had before. I could buy my own feminine clothing, carefully chosen, meticulously inspected. I saved up for my first wig, my first full outfit, my first attempt at makeup that would make me recognizable as Katie. When I finally looked in the mirror, wearing it all for the first time, I felt a strange, wonderful sense of alignment. Not euphoria, exactly. I didn't want it to be confused with gender dysphoria, but a recognition, acknowledgement of the person I had been hiding for so long. I felt attractive, confident, like I was seeing a side of myself that had been waiting quietly for years. The sexual aspect of crossdressing emerged more clearly during this time. In private, I would experiment with arousal, allowing myself to respond to the fabrics, the textures, the reflection in the mirror. It was thrilling, taboo, and yet exhilarating. At the same time, shame followed closely behind. I would sometimes purge my clothes, hiding or discarding pieces as if by eliminating them I could control the impulses I felt so strongly. The rhythm of desire and denial became a constant in my life, a private dance between Katie and the world, between fascination and guilt. Through all of it, I learned about boundaries, about trust, and about validation. Being accepted by someone I loved, even partially, allowed me to explore without fear in ways I had never experienced. I could be vulnerable and not be judged. I could experiment and be playful. I could allow myself to exist fully as Katie, at least for moments at a time. I also began to understand the duality of my existence. There was the public me, the student, the friend, the normal guy, and the private me, the one who craved texture, beauty, and femininity. I realized that one did not cancel out the other. They were intertwined, woven together by experience, desire, and self-awareness. I was learning to navigate both, to honor both, to understand that Katie was not a replacement for me, but an essential part of me. College, with all its freedom, its temptations, and its independence, became the crucible in which I began to understand the depth of who I was. The experiences of being seen, being accepted, being validated, combined with hours of private exploration, taught me lessons I wouldn't fully appreciate for years. They taught me courage, vulnerability, and the importance of self-acceptance. They showed me that desire is not shameful, that curiosity is natural, and that the person inside, quiet, delicate, and feminine, deserved recognition. Looking back, I can see how each small moment, each experiment, each thrill, each pang of guilt built on the last. They were preparing me for the next stage of my journey: independence beyond college, full ownership of my wardrobe and my identity, and eventually, someone who would see me fully, love me, and explore with me the world of Katie openly and without fear. Those years were messy, complicated, thrilling, and terrifying. They taught me about limits and boundaries, about desire and shame, about love and acceptance. And most importantly, they taught me that Katie was real, that she mattered, and that the person I was becoming could be celebrated, not hidden, if I learned how to trust myself. Graduating college felt like stepping off a cliff into a world I wasn't entirely prepared for, but in the best possible way. For the first time, I had money of my own, a tiny apartment to call my own, and the kind of independence that made every choice, every impulse, feel weighty with possibility. And with that independence came Katie. I remember the first time I bought my own feminine clothing. It wasn't just a purchase. It was a declaration. A way of saying to myself, quietly but firmly, you exist. You matter. You deserve this. I chose a delicate camisole, soft pink, with lace trimming along the edges. I remember holding it in my hands, feeling the texture, marveling at how different it felt from anything I had ever worn. When I slipped it on in front of the mirror, I felt my chest tighten, not from shame, but from recognition. This was me. Not a phase, not a secret to hide, not a curiosity to suppress. This was a part of me I could finally touch, see, and feel. The wig was next. I had saved for weeks, carefully scanning reviews, images, and advice from online communities. When it arrived, I unboxed it slowly, reverently, as if unveiling something sacred. The moment I placed it on my head, I felt whole, in a way I hadn't before. Running my fingers through the strands, adjusting it carefully, I caught my reflection in the mirror and gasped softly. Katie looked back at me, not as a costume, not as a fantasy, but as someone real, tangible, and undeniable. Makeup followed. Foundation, eyeliner, mascara, lipstick. The process was meticulous, almost ritualistic. I would spend hours perfecting every detail, blending, brushing, adjusting, and then stepping back to observe the transformation. With each brushstroke, I felt a connection to Katie deepen. Each highlight, each contour, each flick of eyeliner wasn't just about looking feminine. It was about understanding the contours of a part of myself I had kept hidden for so long. And when I looked in the mirror afterward, I felt a strange, dizzying mixture of pride, longing, and desire. I had never felt more alive in my life. And yet, the intensity of these moments came with their own weight. I would often find myself lost in obsession, spending hours dressing, undressing, experimenting, and sometimes purging my wardrobe in moments of guilt. I became acutely aware of the fine line between joy and shame, between expression and compulsion. But every time I let Katie emerge, even briefly, I learned something new about myself, my desires, my boundaries, my capacity for both vulnerability and pleasure. It was during this period that I began to explore the sexual aspect of crossdressing more openly. Alone in my apartment, I allowed myself to respond to the fabrics, the textures, the reflection in the mirror. The sensations were exhilarating and taboo, thrilling and shame-inducing at the same time. I came to understand that the sexual side of Katie wasn't something to hide or deny. It was a facet of who I was, intertwined with my desire to feel feminine, beautiful, and alive. Eventually, I met someone who would change everything: my future wife. She was curious, attentive, and patient in ways I had never encountered before. When I shared Katie with her, I expected hesitation, judgment, maybe even revulsion. Instead, she listened, asked questions, and gradually allowed me to explore with her. We experimented together, carefully and playfully, testing boundaries, learning each other's desires and comfort zones. With her, I felt validated, seen, and safe, a feeling I had longed for my entire life. Our first full session together was quiet, tender, almost reverent. She watched as I dressed, helping with adjustments, suggesting colors and styles, complimenting me in ways that made my heart pound. The intimacy was profound. For the first time, I wasn't hiding. I wasn't sneaking. I wasn't afraid. I was Katie, fully and unapologetically, and she was there, fully accepting and engaged. That acceptance, that validation, was transformative. It taught me that desire and vulnerability could coexist with love and trust. Over time, our explorations deepened. We went shopping together, selecting dresses, heels, and accessories that felt like extensions of my identity. We experimented with makeup, hairstyles, and even eyebrow threading, a surprisingly empowering and satisfying ritual. Each act, each touch, each compliment built a stronger connection between Katie and myself, and between me and my wife. I began to understand that crossdressing wasn't merely about escape, or fantasy, or sexual gratification. It was a way to connect, to express, and to love. Even now, I feel the thrill of discovery every time I dress. Press-on nails, delicate lingerie, fitted dresses, high heels. They are not just clothing. They are tools of expression, tools that allow me to inhabit Katie fully. I revel in the textures, the colors, the confidence they give me. And with each new piece, each new experiment, I feel a little more complete, a little more myself, a little closer to the life I have longed for since childhood. There were setbacks, of course. Moments of doubt, of shame, of questioning whether this was all too much, too indulgent, or too strange. I purged clothing, avoided mirrors, and retreated into silence at times. But each setback taught me resilience, patience, and the importance of self-compassion. Katie was not a phase, a whim, or a fantasy. She was real, and I needed to honor her presence in my life. Reflecting on these years, I can see the journey clearly. From the shy, curious child hiding behind blankets, to the teenage boy experimenting in secret, to the young adult discovering validation and desire in private and with a partner, the path has been anything but linear. It has been messy, intense, confusing, and exhilarating. But every step, every moment of fear, every thrill, every touch, has led me to a deeper understanding of myself and the person I have become. Katie is no longer just a secret I hide in private. She is a living, breathing part of me, fully integrated into my identity. I have learned to balance desire and shame, to embrace both curiosity and sexuality, to inhabit the feminine and the masculine simultaneously. And perhaps most importantly, I have learned that vulnerability is not weakness. Sharing Katie with someone who loves and accepts me has shown me that trust and intimacy are not only possible, but transformative. Looking forward, I know the journey is ongoing. There will be challenges, moments of doubt, and days when I question everything. But there will also be moments of joy, beauty, and discovery. Moments when Katie steps forward fully and unapologetically, when my desires, my identity, and my love intertwine in ways that feel complete and right. Post-college independence didn't just give me freedom. It gave me the tools to claim myself, to explore fully, and to finally accept the girl I had carried inside for decades. And in that acceptance, I found not only pleasure and validation, but peace. Marriage changed everything. Not in the way people usually think. There were no sweeping transformations the moment we exchanged vows, but in subtle, profound ways. Suddenly, there was a commitment, a shared life, someone who would see every side of me, who could witness both the man I was expected to be and the woman I longed to become in private. And that someone was my wife. The first months of marriage were a delicate dance. I still had Katie tucked away, sometimes wearing her in the quiet of the bathroom, sometimes slipping into lingerie under my clothes, always cautious. I wanted to reveal more, to invite her into this world with me, but the fear lingered. What if she rejected me? What if she thought I was strange or broken? What if all the intimacy we shared vanished in an instant because of this secret I had carried for decades? But love, I learned, has a way of bridging gaps that fear cannot cross. Slowly, I began to open up. I shared my past, my experiments, my experiences with girlfriends who had accepted me, my college awakening, and the journey of discovery that had led me here. And she listened, really listened. Her eyes, full of curiosity and care, never judged. She asked questions gently, not to probe or mock, but to understand. And with each answer, each story, each confession, I felt the walls around Katie dissolve just a little more. Our first real session together was quiet. I was nervous, my hands trembling slightly as I laid out a few pieces of lingerie and a wig on the bed. She watched, asking soft questions, which colors I preferred, which textures felt best, how it made me feel to wear each piece. When I slipped on the wig, adjusted the straps of the camisole, and looked in the mirror, her smile was like sunlight breaking through clouds. "You look beautiful," she said, and something inside me unclenched. For the first time in my life, I wasn't hiding, I wasn't sneaking, I wasn't apologizing for being myself. I was Katie and I was seen. From there, our explorations deepened. We went shopping together for dresses, heels, and accessories. She encouraged me to experiment with makeup, showing me techniques, helping me blend, contour, and highlight in ways that made Katie feel real and tangible. We even tried threading my eyebrows together, a surprisingly satisfying ritual that became a small, intimate act we shared. Every brushstroke, every adjustment, every compliment brought a surge of validation that I had never known before. Sexual intimacy became layered with new meaning. Wearing lingerie while cuddling, slipping into a delicate nightgown while she traced patterns on my skin, the thrill of heels on hardwood floors as we moved together. It wasn't just arousal. It was connection, trust, and vulnerability. The taboo I had felt alone, the excitement I had experienced in secret, became a shared, playful, and deeply satisfying experience. With her, I could explore without shame. With her, Katie could fully exist. And yet, the journey wasn't without tension. There were moments of doubt, guilt, and confusion. Sometimes I would purge pieces of clothing, worried that I was indulging too much, that I was overstepping boundaries, that I was too focused on Katie and not enough on the man my world expected me to be. But she reassured me gently, consistently. "This is part of you," she said. "Part of the person I love. Part of the person I married. Don't hide her. Don't hide yourself." Over time, I realized that sharing Katie wasn't just about clothing or makeup or sexual exploration. It was about emotional intimacy, about trust, about letting someone see a side of you that has been hidden for decades and still being loved. Our marriage became a partnership not just in life, but in identity. We celebrated each small victory together. The first time I wore heels without wincing at the sound. The first time I put on a full dress and wig without fear. The first time I received compliments from her friends who never judged, only appreciated. We experimented further, always communicating, always checking boundaries. Sometimes it was as simple as painting nails together or trying a new lipstick shade. Other times it was more adventurous, exploring role-play, teasing, or other intimate activities that deepened our connection. Every experiment, every exploration, was a lesson in trust, vulnerability, and love. Each step was both thrilling and terrifying, but with her I never felt alone. Living openly as Katie within our marriage also taught me self-compassion. I learned to forgive myself for the years of secrecy, for the guilt and shame I had carried, for the moments of obsession and denial. I learned that desire and identity are not weaknesses. I learned that vulnerability can be strength, and that sharing the hidden parts of oneself can be one of the most profound acts of intimacy. And the quiet joys, the little things that made me smile daily, became moments I cherished. Slipping into a pretty dress before breakfast, feeling the soft fabric against my skin as I sipped coffee. Painting my nails while she read nearby, exchanging glances that spoke more than words. Trying on a new wig and twirling in the mirror just to see her eyes light up. These moments, small but infinitely precious, reinforced that Katie was not just a hidden secret but a living, thriving part of my life. As our life together unfolded, I also became aware of how Katie influenced my perspective in the world. I noticed fabrics, colors, and styles in everyday life with a new sensitivity. I became more empathetic, more observant, more attuned to the subtleties of identity and expression in others. Katie didn't just exist in private. She shaped how I saw the world, how I interacted with it, and how I connected with people. The journey is ongoing. There are still moments of doubt, still times when I wonder if I am indulging too much, still days when I feel the weight of societal expectations pressing in. But I have learned to navigate these moments with patience, self-love, and trust in my partner. Katie has become a source of strength, a vessel of expression, a reminder that identity is complex, beautiful, and worthy of celebration. Looking back on my life, I realize how far I have come, from the shy child experimenting with a blanket, to the secretive teenager exploring curiosities, to the college student discovering validation, to the young adult building independence, and now to a married person sharing intimacy and trust. Each stage has shaped me, each experiment has taught me, each revelation has deepened my connection to myself and to the person I love. In many ways, Katie is more than cross-dressing or sexual exploration. She is a lens through which I see beauty, intimacy, vulnerability, and joy. She is a companion, a confidant, a part of my identity that demands recognition and care. And most importantly, she is proof that acceptance, both of oneself and by those we love, can transform fear and shame into love, celebration, and life. It started slowly, almost imperceptibly. At home, Katie had become a living, breathing part of my life, woven seamlessly into my routines, my intimacy with my wife, and even my self-perception. But the idea of taking her beyond the private walls of our home was terrifying. What would people think? Would I be judged, ridiculed, or worse, misunderstood entirely? And yet, there was a quiet yearning inside me, a persistent voice that whispered, "You've come this far. Why hide now?" The first step was small, wearing heels around the apartment for longer periods, walking with intention, learning balance and poise. It may seem trivial to someone who doesn't cross-dress, but the first few minutes of standing tall, feeling the elevated pressure on my heels, the slight sway of my hips, it was transformative. It was more than just physical, it was psychological. Every step reinforced the presence of Katie within me, strengthened her claim to the space I occupied. Then came the clothing experiments. Dresses, skirts, fitted blouses, and flowing fabrics became my daily companions. I practiced in front of mirrors, twirling, adjusting, learning how the garments moved with me. Every outfit was an opportunity to inhabit Katie fully, to feel the world differently, to engage with space, posture, and movement as she would. Each experiment was a rehearsal for the day I would step outside our apartment with confidence. Our first public experiment was tentative, a local cafe, quiet and dimly lit, chosen specifically for its anonymity. My heart pounded as I walked through the door, dressed in a knee-length dress, heels, and a subtle wig. My wife walked beside me, reassuring with her presence, guiding gently. Each step, each glance from strangers, each reflection in the windows was a test. And yet, with each moment, I felt more solid, more grounded in Katie, more daring in claiming her existence in the world. People stared sometimes, or so I imagined. Mostly, they didn't notice at all. And when they did, their reactions were neutral, ordinary, fleeting, nothing catastrophic. I realized then that the fear I had carried for decades was more about my own anticipation of judgment than reality. The world was not as hostile as I had imagined, and in that revelation, a new confidence began to grow. Shopping trips became another arena of exploration. Clothing stores, makeup counters, even shoe stores, spaces that had once been intimidating became playgrounds. I learned to navigate aisles with purpose, ask questions without hesitation, try on items with a mix of curiosity and pride. My wife's encouragement was invaluable. She would suggest styles, compliment choices, and celebrate moments when Katie felt fully alive. Together, we cultivated not just a wardrobe, but a shared confidence, a partnership in embracing identity openly. Fashion, heels, and accessories became tools of expression. Each outfit, each piece, was carefully considered. I discovered the subtle power of accessories, a delicate necklace, a pair of dangling earrings, a colorful scarf. These were not mere additions. They were extensions of Katie's personality, her voice, her presence. Heels, in particular, were transformative. They forced posture, created sway, demanded attention. With every step, I felt Katie grow taller, more confident, more visible, not just to the world, but to myself. Balancing public expression with my masculine identity was an ongoing challenge. There were days when I had professional obligations, responsibilities that demanded a conventional appearance. Other days, I could experiment freely, testing Katie's presence in subtle ways. Painted nails peeking from a jacket cuff, hair styled with delicate care, makeup that could pass unnoticed but made me feel powerful. Each choice was intentional, a negotiation between worlds, between identities, between desire and practicality. The emotional growth that accompanied this phase was profound. Fear, shame, excitement, pride, and curiosity coexisted constantly, each moment teaching me patience and self-compassion. I learned to manage anxiety, to anticipate reactions without overthinking them, and to embrace Katie fully even when the world was unpredictable. With every successful outing, with every moment of unnoticed confidence, I felt more secure, more integrated, more at peace with myself. Katie also deepened my empathy and perspective. Navigating public spaces as her, I became acutely aware of how people present themselves, how confidence intersects with perception, how subtle judgments can influence behavior. I understood, more intimately than ever before, the courage it takes to inhabit an identity that may not fit societal expectations. And through this understanding, I became more patient, more compassionate, and more forgiving, not just toward myself, but toward others navigating their own identities. This period was not without its challenges. There were moments of fear, days when I retreated to the safety of home, when anxiety over judgment or exposure felt overwhelming. There were evenings when I questioned if public expression was worth the risk, when self-doubt threatened to erase the confidence I had painstakingly built. But each retreat was temporary, each fear a lesson. Over time, I learned resilience, understanding that growth is rarely linear, and courage often resides in small, repeated acts rather than grand gestures. Through these experiences, I realized that living as Katie publicly didn't require grand declarations or complete immersion. It required presence, intentionality, and self-respect. Each small act, choosing heels, selecting a dress, applying makeup, was a reclamation of identity, a celebration of who I was inside, a tangible manifestation of decades of self-discovery. In retrospect, this stage of exploration, the stepping outside, the public presence, the subtle assertions of identity, was crucial. It solidified my confidence, strengthened my bond with my wife, and deepened my understanding of Katie. It taught me that the world is not always as harsh as our fears, that visibility can be empowering, and that the integration of identity into everyday life is both a practice and a celebration. Even now, I carry the lessons of these first ventures outward. Katie exists fully in our home, comfortably in our intimacy, and gradually in spaces beyond it. Each outing, each experiment, each small act of visibility reinforces that she is not just a secret or a fantasy, but a vital, celebrated part of who I am. Public expression also reshaped how I saw myself privately. The confidence I gained outside became a quiet strength inside. Dressing at home was no longer solely about secrecy or exploration. It became a rehearsal, a moment of joy, a reaffirmation of identity. Each outfit, each wig, each brushstroke was a reminder that Katie mattered, that she deserved recognition, and that living openly, even in small ways, was possible. This stage, perhaps more than any other, taught me the interplay between fear and courage, secrecy and openness, shame and pride. It illuminated the delicate balance of dual identity, the power of intention, and the transformative potential of self-acceptance. Katie had moved from hidden whispers to tangible presence, from fantasy to lived experience, from private secret to celebrated identity. By this stage of my journey, Katie had grown from a private fantasy into a full-fledged identity, a companion, a confidant, a lens through which I experienced the world. The initial fears of public exposure had lessened, replaced by a cautious excitement and a growing desire to explore more boldly. I realized that fashion wasn't just clothing, it was language, expression, and empowerment. It could communicate confidence, sensuality, playfulness, or elegance. And I was ready to speak fluently. Shopping trips became more deliberate, almost ritualistic. No longer did I only choose what felt safe or easy to hide. I sought fabrics that flowed with my movements, patterns that complemented my skin tone, silhouettes that enhanced my body. Dresses that hugged curves in subtle ways, skirts that swayed with intention, blouses that balanced sophistication with sensuality. Each piece was an experiment in presence, an assertion of identity, and a celebration of Katie. Heels became a particular fascination. I experimented with height, shape, and style, stilettos, pumps, wedges, learning how each altered posture, gait, and confidence. Standing on a heel was more than a physical act. It was psychological armor. With each step, I reminded myself that Katie existed in reality, not just imagination, and that she deserved to be acknowledged fully. Walking in public with heels taught balance, patience, and poise. Each stride reinforced the quiet declaration that I was present, visible, and unashamed. Wigs and hairstyles also evolved. I began trying longer styles, experimenting with layers and colors, understanding how hair could frame not just the face, but the persona of Katie. Each wig became a mask, a performance, and an extension of identity all at once. Applying and styling them was almost meditative, a time when I connected deeply with myself before entering the world. Makeup, too, became a craft. Blending, contouring, highlighting, it was no longer about hiding masculine features, but about emphasizing the features that made Katie tangible and alive. Socially, I learned nuance. I discovered that subtle cues, a flick of hair, a shift in posture, a glance in the mirror, could assert Katie's presence without overt declaration. In small gatherings, I could wear a dress and heels, keeping interactions normal yet infused with identity. In professional or casual settings, I could integrate elements, a scarf, painted nails, subtle makeup, that reinforced Katie's existence while navigating the world's expectations. Each decision became a lesson in boundaries, timing, and self-confidence. Interacting with others was illuminating. Some noticed and responded with curiosity, compliment, or admiration. Others didn't notice at all. Both experiences were affirming in different ways. Recognition felt validating, while anonymity proved that I could exist fully without fear of constant judgment. Each interaction reinforced the balance between visibility and discretion, teaching me how to navigate public spaces as both Katie and myself. This period also deepened the emotional and psychological dimensions of Katie. I began journaling more, reflecting on how clothing, movement, and social interactions affected my mood, confidence, and sense of self. I realized that Katie wasn't just about aesthetics or sexual expression. She was a coping mechanism, a form of empowerment, and a deeply ingrained part of my identity. Each outfit, each public appearance, each experiment became a data point, helping me understand myself more fully. Boundaries remained crucial. There were moments when the world felt overwhelming or unsafe. Crowds, judgmental stares, or intrusive comments reminded me that visibility carried risks. In these moments, I retreated to home, to the safety of my private space, to my wife's supportive presence. These retreats were not failures, but necessary recalibrations, opportunities to reflect, recharge, and prepare for future expression. I learned that courage wasn't about constant exposure. It was about knowing when to step forward and when to step back. Intimacy with my wife continued to evolve alongside these public experiences. She became my mirror, my guide, my collaborator. Together, we experimented with bolder outfits, public-adjacent adventures, and creative expressions of fashion and identity. Each exploration strengthened our bond, deepened trust, and reaffirmed the principle that vulnerability could coexist with joy, desire, and empowerment. I also began to understand the interplay of sexuality and identity on a deeper level. Katie was not just a vessel for aesthetic pleasure. She was a conduit for desire, confidence, and playful power. Wearing a flowing dress, painting nails, or walking in heels was simultaneously intimate, erotic, and affirming. It was a celebration of self that integrated desire with identity, pleasure with authenticity. There were mistakes, of course. Some outfits didn't work, some experiments felt forced, some public interactions were uncomfortable. But each misstep taught patience, humility, and resilience. Fashion became not just expression, but education, a continuous dialogue between Katie, myself, and the world. Through all of this, I realized something profound. Identity is fluid and multifaceted. I could exist as the man the world expected, the husband my wife loved, and the feminine, playful, sensual Katie. These identities were not contradictory. They were complementary, forming a richer, more nuanced sense of self. Understanding this, embracing it, and navigating it became the central challenge and joy of my journey. Katie's role in my life was no longer secretive or shameful. She was an active, visible participant in my existence, shaping how I moved, how I presented, and how I felt. She taught me empathy, self-awareness, resilience, and the power of vulnerability. She reminded me that identity is not fixed, that courage comes in small, deliberate acts, and that living fully requires embracing all aspects of oneself, even those that society might not immediately understand. Reflecting on these experiences, I see the trajectory of a lifetime, from childhood curiosity to teenage secrecy, from college experimentation to post-college independence, from intimate marital discovery to public expression and social integration. Each stage built upon the last, creating a complex, layered, and deeply authentic identity. Katie is not a mask. She is not a phase. She is a living, breathing, evolving part of who I am. By the time I entered this stage of my journey, Katie had become more than a persona. She was a companion, a voice, a constant presence in my life. I no longer saw crossdressing as a secret indulgence or an occasional escape. It was a skill, a form of expression, and a source of deep, personal fulfillment. The years of experimentation, reflection, and discovery had matured into mastery, not perfection, but an understanding of myself and the way I wanted to navigate the world. Home was no longer the only sanctuary for Katie. I had learned to balance dual identities with grace, the professional, socially expected version of myself and the confident, feminine, playful Katie. This balance was delicate and required constant awareness, but it was also empowering. Every decision, what to wear, how to move, when to reveal and when to conceal, was a deliberate act of self-affirmation. I became fluent in the language of identity, able to navigate spaces with awareness, poise, and authenticity. Professional life presented its own challenges. I maintained boundaries carefully, choosing subtly feminine touches rather than overt declarations. A scarf, painted nails, or a subtle hairstyle could carry Katie's presence without drawing undue attention. It was a dance of discretion and confidence, a skill I refined over time. I realized that living authentically didn't always require full disclosure. Sometimes, it was about embodying Katie internally while interacting with the world externally. Social circles also shifted. As my confidence grew, I discovered communities where Katie could exist more fully. Online forums, discreet gatherings, and spaces where crossdressers shared experiences, tips, and validation. These connections were vital. Hearing others' stories, seeing the diversity of experiences, and sharing my own journey reinforced that I was not alone. Katie was part of a larger tapestry, a community of people who, like me, were navigating identity, desire, and expression in nuanced ways. With each new connection, I realized that acceptance begins with oneself. The fear of judgment, the internalized shame, the secrecy. All of these were remnants of earlier stages, slowly dissipating as I claimed my identity more fully. Katie thrived not in hiding, but in affirmation, both private and public. I understood that my worth did not depend on external validation alone. It stemmed from my courage to be seen, my willingness to explore, and my commitment to authenticity. Marriage remained central to this stage. My wife's support and encouragement had become a steady foundation. Together, we navigated boundaries, explored fantasies, and celebrated victories. We developed rituals, shopping trips, makeup sessions, and intimate adventures that reinforced trust and deepened connection. Her presence gave me the confidence to take risks, try new styles, and embrace Katie's complexity without fear. With her, I could explore the most vulnerable aspects of myself, knowing that love and acceptance awaited. The interplay between sexual expression and identity became more integrated. Katie's femininity was no longer separate from desire. It was fully entwined. Wearing lingerie, experimenting with heels, or painting nails could be sensual, empowering, and deeply satisfying, all at once. The shame that had once accompanied these acts had largely melted away, replaced with self-compassion and understanding. I realized that sexuality and identity could coexist harmoniously, and that exploring one could enhance the other. Public confidence continued to grow. Small steps became bolder choices. Wearing a dress to a friend's gathering, styling hair in a way that highlighted femininity, or experimenting with makeup in social settings. Each act reinforced mastery over fear, building resilience and self-assurance. I learned to read environments, gauge comfort, and assert Katie's presence gracefully. It was empowering to move through the world fully inhabiting identity, knowing that each action was a deliberate choice, not a compulsion. Emotional growth was intertwined with this mastery. I reflected regularly, journaling experiences, challenges, and triumphs. These reflections clarified the trajectory of my journey, helping me integrate lessons from childhood curiosity, teenage secrecy, college experimentation, and marital exploration. I recognized patterns, the moments of fear, the sources of shame, the instances of joy and validation. This awareness allowed me to anticipate challenges, celebrate victories, and maintain balance between identities. Belonging became a central theme. Connecting with supportive communities, sharing stories, and receiving feedback fostered a sense of inclusion I had never known as a child. I realized that Katie was not just my secret or fantasy. She was a valid expression of identity that could coexist with social norms, marital commitment, and personal integrity. Belonging didn't require conformity. It required courage, authenticity, and connection. Even small daily rituals became affirmations of mastery. Choosing an outfit thoughtfully, adjusting a wig, applying makeup with precision, or walking confidently in heels were acts of celebration. Each ritual reinforced the presence of Katie, the legitimacy of identity, and the joy of self-expression. I discovered that mastery wasn't about perfection. It was about consistency, awareness, and respect for oneself. Challenges still arose. Moments of doubt, social anxiety, or fatigue reminded me that mastery is an ongoing practice, not a final destination. But I faced these moments with tools I had developed over years: self-reflection, support networks, intimacy with my wife, and the internalized knowledge that Katie was not a mistake or a whim, but a vital and valid part of who I am. Through all this, I learned a fundamental truth. Identity is fluid, layered, and multifaceted. I could exist simultaneously as a professional, a husband, a man, and as Katie, a feminine, sensual, playful presence. These layers did not conflict. They complemented, enriched, and reinforced each other. Accepting this complexity became the ultimate form of mastery. Looking back, I see a lifetime of growth. From a curious child experimenting with blankets, to a secretive teenager, to a college student discovering desire and validation, to a post-college adult claiming independence, to a married partner sharing intimacy and identity, to now, a confident individual integrating Katie into all aspects of life. Each stage built upon the last, forming a rich tapestry of experience, resilience, and self-acceptance. Katie's presence, once hidden, shameful, or secretive, is now fully celebrated. She informs my interactions, strengthens my relationships, enhances intimacy, and deepens self-awareness. She is not just a persona or hobby. She is a living expression of identity, desire, and authenticity. Mastery lies not in perfection or public validation, but in the consistent, conscious, and compassionate integration of all aspects of oneself. By this point, Katie had grown into a fully realized part of me. The quiet experiments of childhood and the cautious exploration of early adulthood had blossomed into something rich, complex, and undeniably authentic. She was no longer confined to whispers in the bedroom, fleeting moments in mirrors, or secret clothing tucked away in drawers. Katie existed as a presence that could move through private and public spaces, intimate moments, and social interactions, with a confidence that I had never thought possible. The evolution of self-expression became an art form. Each outfit was carefully considered, not just for style, but for mood, intention, and the effect it would have on both myself and the world around me. I experimented with textures and layers, patterns and colors, wigs of every style, and makeup that ranged from subtle enhancements to bold statements. It was no longer about hiding or conforming. It was about celebration, exploration, and fully inhabiting identity. Every combination of clothing, hair, and accessories was an opportunity to step more deeply into Katie and experience the joy of living authentically. Public ventures became more daring. I tested boundaries with small semi-public adventures first, quiet cafes, low-traffic streets, bookstores, and gradually progressed to more visible spaces, crowded events, local markets, even professional gatherings where subtle elements of Katie could coexist with expectations of masculinity. Each experience was both thrilling and grounding, a reinforcement that identity and confidence could coexist with societal norms. Each outing was a lesson in poise, resilience, and the careful calibration of vulnerability. Fashion and posture became tools of empowerment. Heels, once awkward and challenging, were now second nature. Each step was deliberate, every movement considered. Clothes no longer disguised or defined me. They enhanced presence, projected confidence, and embodied the energy of Katie. Accessories, jewelry, scarves, and even subtle scents became extensions of identity, each detail carefully curated to create cohesion between how I felt inside and how I appeared outside. My wife continued to be a central part of this journey. Together, we explored the boundaries of social comfort and intimacy. Shopping trips became adventures, makeup sessions transformed into shared rituals of creativity, evenings spent dressing and styling together became acts of connection, laughter, and affirmation. With her, every experiment was safe, every risk met with support, every expression validated. Our bond deepened as we navigated the complex interplay of desire, identity, and shared exploration. Katie's evolution also taught me how to manage attention, curiosity, and judgment from others. Not every glance or comment required explanation or apology. I learned to navigate public perception with calm awareness, letting Katie's confidence speak for itself. People's reactions, whether positive, neutral, or confused, no longer dictated my comfort or self-worth. The years of secrecy, fear, and shame had given way to resilience, self-assurance, and the quiet power of authenticity. Emotional depth deepened alongside social expression. I journaled frequently, reflecting on sensations, emotions, and interactions. Each outing, each experiment, and each intimate moment became data points in understanding myself more fully. I documented the thrill of a perfectly fitting dress, the satisfaction of a bold makeup choice, the serenity of walking confidently in heels, and the warmth of my wife's affirming gaze. These reflections were a tapestry of growth, self-compassion, and celebration. Katie's presence in social and semi-public contexts also brought insight into human perception and interaction. I became acutely aware of subtle cues, body language, tone, and glance. I understood, in a way that only immersion could teach, the courage required for others to inhabit identities that may challenge expectations. These lessons fostered empathy, patience, and a profound respect for authenticity, both in myself and in others navigating non-conventional expression. The interplay of desire and identity had also evolved. Where once sexual expression felt secretive, taboo, or shameful, it now coexisted with pride, joy, and intimacy. Wearing lingerie, styling hair, walking in heels, or painting nails was sensual, empowering, and emotionally affirming. Katie was not just a costume. She was a medium for connection, desire, and self-expression. Sexuality was no longer a source of shame, but a natural, integrated element of identity. Challenges persisted, as they always do. There were moments of doubt, anxiety, or fatigue when social interactions felt overwhelming, when public exposure seemed risky, or when the duality of identity required delicate management. But each challenge was approached with tools honed over decades: self-awareness, reflection, community support, marital partnership, and the deep internalized knowledge that Katie's presence was valid and meaningful. Each obstacle became a lesson in patience, resilience, and growth. Community became another vital element of this stage. Engaging with crossdressers, supportive friends, and online spaces reinforced belonging, validation, and inspiration. Shared stories, advice, and encouragement created a network that reminded me that identity is not only personal, but also collective. Katie was part of a larger, diverse, and vibrant spectrum of expression, one that celebrated individuality, nurtured curiosity, and affirmed authenticity. Advanced self-expression also involved playfulness and creativity. I experimented with themes, seasonal fashion, costume elements, and bold makeup. Katie became a character with personality, mood, and presence, sometimes playful and flirtatious, other times elegant and poised. Each iteration taught me more about the subtlety of presentation, the impact of detail, and the joy of inhabiting identity fully and unapologetically. Ultimately, this stage was about integration. The child who had first wrapped a blanket as a skirt, the teenager sneaking panties, the college student experimenting privately, the young adult discovering desire, the married partner exploring intimacy, and the confident adult navigating public and social spaces. All of these versions were woven together into a coherent whole. Katie was no longer separate from me. She was fully integrated, celebrated, and honored in every aspect of life. In reflecting on this evolution, I recognize that living authentically is a continuous journey. Confidence, mastery, and integration are not endpoints, they are practices. Each day offers opportunities for expression, connection, and self-discovery. Each outfit, each gesture, each social interaction reinforces identity, builds resilience, and deepens understanding. Katie is both journey and destination, a companion, a lens, and an ongoing affirmation of who I am. By now, Katie had become inseparable from who I was. She was no longer a private indulgence or a hidden aspect of my identity. She lived with me every day, seamlessly integrated into my routines, my relationships, and my sense of self. The journey from secrecy to acceptance, from curiosity to mastery, had culminated in a lifestyle where Katie's presence was natural, empowering, and essential. Morning routines became rituals. I'd wake up, carefully choose an outfit, and style myself with intention. Every dress, skirt, or blouse was selected not just for comfort or aesthetic, but for how it would allow Katie to inhabit the day fully. Wigs were chosen based on mood and weather. Makeup was applied with care, and accessories were considered not as decoration but as statements of identity. Each morning reaffirmed who I was, setting the tone for both Katie and myself. Professional life was approached with the same care and nuance. I learned to navigate spaces where masculinity was expected without denying Katie's presence. Subtle expressions, painted nails, understated jewelry, carefully chosen scarves, allowed me to assert identity while maintaining professionalism. I realized that living authentically didn't require public declaration at every moment. It required balance, awareness, and deliberate choices. This balance became a form of artistry, a dance between expression and discretion that I refined over years. Social interactions were richer and more confident. I could attend gatherings, dinners, and public events as Katie, fully inhabiting her identity while remaining aware of social norms and expectations. I became adept at reading cues, adjusting presentation, and maintaining comfort while asserting authenticity. People's reactions, whether curiosity, admiration, or neutrality, no longer dictated my self-worth. I had internalized validation, knowing that Katie's existence was valid and meaningful. Home life remained a sanctuary and a playground. Katie thrived in intimate spaces with my wife and in moments of private exploration. Together, we celebrated rituals, shopping, styling, dressing up, experimenting with makeup that reinforced connection, trust, and joy. These shared moments deepened our relationship, fostered intimacy, and affirmed the authenticity of identity in both private and shared spheres. The integration of sexuality and identity was seamless. Desire, expression, and confidence coexisted naturally. Wearing lingerie, experimenting with outfits, or walking in heels could be sensual, playful, and affirming. Shame, once intertwined with these experiences, had been replaced by self-compassion and pride. Katie was no longer an object of secrecy, but a vehicle for empowerment, intimacy, and connection. Community engagement became a vital part of life. Connecting with other crossdressers, participating in forums, attending discreet gatherings, and sharing experiences reinforced belonging. These interactions provided perspective, validation, and inspiration, showing that identity could coexist with diverse social norms, relationships, and personal commitments. Katie was not alone. She was part of a network of individuals embracing complexity, authenticity, and self-expression. Daily life became a seamless integration of identities. I moved through professional, social, and intimate worlds with awareness and confidence. Katie informed my posture, gestures, and presence. She added richness to interactions, subtlety to expression, and playfulness to routine. Identity was no longer compartmentalized. It was integrated, celebrated, and visible in ways both subtle and bold. Emotional reflection deepened. I continued journaling, capturing experiences, insights, and growth. I documented moments of triumph, challenges, fears, and joy. This practice reinforced self-awareness, emotional resilience, and connection to both Katie and my broader identity. Reflection became a tool for understanding, growth, and self-compassion, reminding me that identity is both evolving and enduring. Boundaries remained essential. I continued to navigate public spaces with discretion, choosing moments and contexts where Katie's presence could be expressed safely. Privacy, consent, and personal comfort were guiding principles. These boundaries were not limitations. They were acts of self-respect and empowerment, allowing Katie to exist fully without unnecessary risk or compromise. Integration extended to personal style and aesthetic. Each outfit, hairstyle, accessory, and gesture was intentional, reflecting mood, identity, and presence. Fashion was no longer an experiment. It was a language, a medium through which Katie communicated internally and externally. Confidence and poise became second nature, built on decades of exploration, practice, and self-discovery. The relationship with my wife evolved alongside lifestyle integration. We experimented with shared styling, public-adjacent adventures, and intimate play that reinforced trust, desire, and connection. Her presence provided validation, encouragement, and perspective. Together, we navigated the balance of public expression, private exploration, and shared identity, creating a partnership rooted in authenticity, empathy, and shared joy. Ultimately, this stage represents the culmination of decades of exploration, fear, courage, and growth. Katie is fully integrated into daily life, informing identity, expression, relationships, and self-perception. She is not a mask, a secret, or a phase. She is a living, evolving, celebrated part of who I am. Living authentically requires courage, awareness, and compassion, but the reward is profound, a life where identity, desire, and self-expression coexist harmoniously. Reflection on this integration highlights the journey from childhood curiosity to full-fledged lifestyle. The experiences of secrecy, experimentation, shame, exploration, and public expression coalesced into mastery and acceptance. Each stage, childhood, adolescence, college, post-college, marriage, public exploration, and community engagement, was a stepping stone toward authentic living. Katie exists now fully, celebrated, and honored, enriching life in ways that secrecy and fear could never allow. Living with Katie every day, balancing identities, and embracing both desire and authenticity has transformed life. The journey is ongoing, but the foundation is strong. Confidence, self-compassion, awareness, and integration. Identity is fluid, layered, and multidimensional. Katie is not separate from me. She is me, fully present, fully alive, and fully embraced. Sitting quietly at the edge of my bedroom, a cup of tea warming my hands, I let myself breathe and reflect. It's rare that I take a pause like this, not because life is overwhelmingly busy, but because reflection requires vulnerability. It demands honesty. And after all these years, after every twist, every secret, every triumph and misstep, I can finally look at the story of Katie and myself without fear, shame, or reservation. I think back to the earliest memories, those moments of curiosity where I wrapped a blanket as a skirt or admired the curves of a dress hidden in my mother's wardrobe. Those tiny sparks of fascination were the very first seeds of identity, innocent, tender, and unacknowledged. At the time, I could not have imagined how those seemingly inconsequential acts would evolve into a core part of my being. Yet, in hindsight, every small action, every secret moment, every pang of shame or thrill of discovery built the foundation of who I am today. Reflecting on adolescence is more bittersweet. I remember the secrecy, the borrowed panties, and the furtive glances at mirrors where I tried to reconcile desire and identity. Shame and confusion were ever present, yet so were the tiny flashes of joy and self-recognition. I can forgive that frightened, hidden version of myself. I can even admire the courage it took to navigate curiosity in a world that would not have understood, to maintain secrecy while exploring identity, and to continue despite fear of judgment. College and early adulthood were a time of awakening. Desire, curiosity, and identity intersected in ways I had never fully anticipated. The thrill of exploration, the joy of being seen by someone who accepted me, and the first purchases of clothing, wigs, and makeup, all of these experiences were formative. I learned lessons in consent, boundaries, and the intersection of sexuality and identity. I stumbled, I misstepped, I felt shame, and yet each experience propelled me further into self-understanding and acceptance. Marriage added a profound new dimension. Sharing my journey with my wife, building trust, and creating a space for mutual exploration transformed my understanding of intimacy, love, and vulnerability. The rituals we developed, shopping together, styling together, exploring fantasies together, fostered connection in ways I could never have imagined. Through her, I learned that identity could be integrated into relationships, that authenticity strengthens love, and that vulnerability can coexist with passion. Public expression, community engagement, and social exploration marked another stage of growth. I learned how to navigate social spaces with poise, discretion, and confidence. I discovered that acceptance from others is meaningful, but not necessary for validation. I embraced the delicate balance of visibility and privacy, discovering that empowerment comes from self-affirmation, deliberate action, and consistent practice. These experiences taught resilience, patience, and the profound value of belonging to a supportive community. Now, as I consider the present, I see Katie fully integrated into daily life. She informs my choices, my presence, and my relationships. She is not a secret to be hidden, but a companion to be celebrated. Fashion, makeup, gestures, and expression are no longer experiments. They are mediums of identity, joy, and affirmation. Every day is an opportunity to inhabit her fully, to navigate the world with authenticity, and to revel in the liberation that comes from embracing oneself. Emotionally, the journey has been transformative. I have moved from fear to courage, from shame to self-compassion, from secrecy to celebration. Every step, childhood, adolescence, college, marriage, public exploration, and lifestyle integration, was necessary. Each stage taught resilience, self-awareness, and courage. Each misstep, each moment of doubt, each secretive thrill contributed to the strength I feel today. I understand that identity is not static. It is an evolving, living entity shaped by experience, reflection, and choice. Looking to the future, I see endless opportunities for growth and exploration. Katie's evolution is not complete. She will continue to adapt, express, and inspire. I hope to explore more public expression, greater community involvement, and deeper intimacy and creativity with my wife. I want to continue integrating identity with life fully, celebrating every aspect without shame or hesitation. I want to keep discovering the nuances of self-expression, testing boundaries safely, and cultivating joy, desire, and confidence in tandem. Beyond personal growth, I feel a responsibility to share this story, to offer guidance, validation, and encouragement to others navigating similar journeys. I wish I could speak to my younger self, to reassure that curiosity is not shameful, that identity is valid, and that desire can coexist with authenticity. I wish to impart the understanding that every experience, no matter how secretive or confusing at the time, contributes to the richness of who you become. Katie's journey is proof that embracing identity fully, despite fear, societal expectations, or personal uncertainty, leads to liberation, self-respect, and profound fulfillment. I have also learned that community and connection are vital. Sharing stories, seeking advice, or simply listening to others provides perspective, support, and validation. No journey is truly solitary, even if it begins in secrecy or isolation. Through connection, we affirm our existence, gain strength, and foster empathy. Katie's life intersects with many others, creating a network of understanding and shared experience that enriches both identity and relationships. The final realization is perhaps the most profound. Acceptance begins with oneself. External validation, social approval, or recognition is secondary to internal acknowledgement. Every outfit, gesture, or act of self-expression is a declaration that you matter, that your identity matters, and that your presence in the world is valid. Katie's existence is a testament to courage, vulnerability, and authenticity. She thrives not because others accept her, but because I do. As I close this chapter, I feel a deep sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the journey, the mistakes, the lessons, the joy, and the love that has accompanied me. Gratitude for the courage to explore, to stumble, to rise, and to integrate identity fully into life. Gratitude for my wife, whose love and support have made it possible to inhabit Katie without fear. And gratitude for Katie herself, a living, evolving, beautiful embodiment of authenticity, sensuality, and playfulness. Katie is no longer hidden. She is not a phase. She is not an indulgence or a secret to be ashamed of. She is a companion, a reflection, and a declaration of self. Living with her is a practice of authenticity, courage, and joy. Every day, I am reminded that identity is multifaceted, evolving, and worthy of celebration. Every day, I have the opportunity to express, explore, and affirm the richness of who I am. And so I look forward, not with fear, hesitation, or doubt, but with anticipation. The journey continues as it always will. Katie will evolve, expression will deepen, and life will expand in complexity, beauty, and fulfillment. I step forward with confidence, curiosity, and joy, knowing that authenticity is not just a choice, but a practice, a celebration, and a legacy. This is my story. It is not perfect, nor is it fully complete, but it is real, honest, and deeply mine. Katie is me, I am Katie, and together we continue forward, celebrated, visible, and unapologetically alive.